If you like this video and would want to see more like it, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment with your opinions. At 62 years old, I never thought I'd be in this predicament. At this point in time, life ought to have been expected to be predictable. I dream of mornings spent tending to my garden, afternoons immersed in peaceful reading, and evenings spent at Mark's side, remembering the good old days. However, everything changed one night during a private talk, and I began to doubt my previous assumptions. The ball began at Mark's company's annual corporate banquet. He had been an ardent and dedicated employee for about 30 years, steadily climbing the corporate ladder. I had only ever exchanged courteous greetings with Richard Caldwell, his boss, a guy of quiet power, at prior gatherings. A towering figure in his mid-60s, he had an aura of unassuming self-assurance. At the gala, which took place at a five-star hotel in the heart of Chicago, the guests were greeted by the warm light of the hotel's magnificent chandeliers. In the corner, a live jazz band played a gentle melody as the room buzzed with talk and the sound of drinks clinking. These events weren't anything I was very fond of. Being at home was more appealing to me. I agreed to go with Mark despite my reservations and changed into a modest navy blue dress because he was insistent. At first glance, everything appeared to be quite mundane. I kept myself occupied by conversing with the other wives while Mark was engrossed in conversations with his co-workers. That changed when Richard came up to me. "I need a moment, Evelyn." His question pierced through the background noise as he spoke. I was unsure. "Just a second? Just what is Mark's boss's motivation for wanting me?" Still, I nodded and grinned courteously as he escorted me out of the main ballroom via a side corridor. With the gala far behind us, the air was noticeably calmer. He led me into a private lounge, an inviting space with leather sofas, a fireplace, and low lighting. Subtle yet noticeable anxiety pervaded the atmosphere. Sitting across from him made my heart race a little quicker. "I hope I'm not distracting you from anything important," he said, his smile tiny and timid. I told him it wasn't the case, but I still couldn't control my insatiable curiosity. "Do you have something current in your thoughts?" He seemed to be at a loss for words as he rubbed his hands together and moaned. At last, he broke the silence. "It concerns Mark." My knot in my gut tightened as I straightened in my chair. "Is there an issue?" He paused. "Not at all. However, I believe it is important for you to be aware of this." Even before he spoke a word, I could sense the gravity of his statement. His expression unnerved me with its seriousness and quiet intensity, which caused my heart rate to increase. "Evelyn," he murmured in a soft but determined tone. "For many years, I've been friends with Mark. I've seen him grow professionally, be there for his co-workers, and provide for his family. Something has been on my mind throughout this entire ordeal." Hardly did I swallow. "Describe it." His eyes met mine as he drew in closer. "He ought to value you more than he does." I felt the words crush into my chest. A surge of defensiveness washed over me as my breath caught. "Yes, I stutter-talked because I don't get it. Mark truly excels as a spouse. All along, he has been." Nodding, Richard gave the signal. "To my knowledge, he is." "When did he last see you in person, Evelyn? You are an exceptional lady, and not only in your role as his wife." Words failed to escape my lips as I prepared to reply. He went on, this time speaking more softly. "When he's preoccupied, I can see your expression. At these kinds of occasions, I've seen you stand by the sidelines as he gets completely absorbed in his work. Does he reciprocate the amount of effort you put in?" My throat tightened. Some part of me hesitated to speak up and tell him he was incorrect. Richard said, "I don't intend to overstep," as he leaned back slightly. "Outsiders, though, can occasionally notice things that those on the inside miss." My thoughts were racing as I gently inhaled. Richard gave me a knowing smile as he looked at my face. "You are deserving of recognition, Evelyn." A chord I didn't know I possessed was touched by the words. I had no idea how I should feel, which was a first. There I sat, motionless. Richard's comments lingered in my thoughts, igniting a feeling I wasn't prepared to face. "You should be recognized." For how long had I been invisible? His remarks seemed like an honest but ill-advised effort at being polite, and I wanted to dismiss them as such. Some part of me, though, felt he was right. As a provider, Mark was a decent man. Through it all, he had been dependable and stable. When was the last time he looked me in the eye during those important, quiet moments? Had he ever taken note of the little things I did to make our lives more comfortable and fulfilling? How I perfected the art of shirt folding to his liking. How I made sure our home was always stocked with his favorite things. How I had supported him through each professional achievement and then sat back. After a lump had formed in my throat, I pushed it down and cleared my throat. Richard, He stopped me in my tracks with a raised hand. My intention is not to cause you any distress, Evelyn. I couldn't just sit on my hands and do nothing, though. I exhaled slowly. Your candor is really appreciated. At long last, I spoke, albeit my voice was noticeably lower than I had hoped. However, my relationship with Mark spans decades. Being physically present is only one aspect of marriage. Devotion and consistency are key. Nodding, Richard gave the signal. I am aware, and I value that. With an unblinking stare, he leaned forward ever so slightly. However, have you ever stopped to consider your deepest desires? There was still unanswered question in the air between us. My want. I had dedicated a great deal of time and energy to meeting Mark's needs, our marriage's requirements, and everyone else's expectations of me. In all my years, I had never given any thought to my desires. A frightened giggle escaped me. At a company event, Richard, this is the talk of the town. He grinned because of that. It could be. However, I felt compelled to express it. For a long period, there was just the gentle crackle of the fireplace to break the silence. He stood up and sighed. You should be allowed to return. Like her, I rose up and, with hands that were a little shaky, smoothed my dress. My whereabouts will be a mystery to Mark, surely. There was an unintelligible look on Richard's face as he nodded. I only had one commitment from Evelyn. I arched an eyebrow. Then what is it? My words should not be disregarded. Consider this. I paused for a moment before slowly nodding. All right. He smiled slightly at me and then stood back, pointing to the door. I could still feel the conversation's weight on my chest as I walked past him, but I also felt his warm presence by my side. When I got back, the gala was going strong. Mark remained engrossed in a discussion with his co-workers, precisely where I had left him. At first, he failed to see me. For a second, I stood back and watched him. As he spoke, his hands gestured and his face betrayed his energy. His enthusiasm and determination were qualities that I had always admired in him. But then I remembered Richard's words. Had Mark ever given me that kind of look? He looked over at me for the first time and then returned his attention to his conversation after giving me a subtle nod. A change occurred deep within me. Even though I made an effort to disregard the seed that Richard had sown, I couldn't deny that it was showing signs of growth. It was peaceful on the way home. Sitting next to me, Mark had a solid grasp on the wheel and stared intently ahead at the dark road ahead. My thoughts were elsewhere as the city lights sped by in a haze. I couldn't get Richard's voice out of my thoughts. His words continued to reverberate. You should be recognized. I sneaked a peek at Mark. There was just the barest hint of tension between his brows, but he appeared exhausted. I had committed every feature of his face to memory during our nearly 40 years of marriage. His jawline, the furrows in his eyes as he laughs, and the tightness of his lips as he concentrates. However, when was the last instance when he gave me a serious look? He broke the stillness by clearing his throat. Was tonight fun for you? It was a surprising question. It seemed more like a formality than an expression of interest. He asked it following every single social gathering and dinner party. Before responding, I was hesitant. I found it fascinating. Absent-mindedly, he nodded. Very well done. The subject was abruptly dropped. As we approached the peaceful suburbs, I redirected my attention to the window and watched the metropolis fade into the distance. Upon our return home, Mark proceeded as usual, removing his jacket, placing his keys on the counter, and retiring to his office for a final review of his email. For a considerable amount of time, I remained in the kitchen, gazing at the vacant spot where he had previously been. He didn't irritate me. Not at all. Mark had always maintained this demeanor, being committed to his job and consistent with his habits. A good and secure existence had been bestowed upon me by him. However, Richard's comments had triggered an emotion within me that I was unable to suppress. On my way to my bedroom, I glanced in the mirror and saw my reflection. Aged 62. Silver streaks ran through my once auburn hair. The years I had lived were marked by faint lines that crossed my face. My eyes, however, remained unchanged. Plus, I noticed something in them that I hadn't seen for quite some time. A sense of being alone. This gradual settling into routine and the relative quietness that comes with it are both things I had always thought were natural aspects of getting older. I had never before asked myself, was it? Mark kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "I'll be home late," the next morning before he went for work. "I have an important client meeting." I gave a little smile and nodded. "Wonderful, be safe." Afterwards, he departed. I lingered in the foyer for what felt like an eternity before returning inside. My typical day would consist of doing errands, cleaning, or tending to my garden. I was fidgety today, though. I picked up the phone and called a number I never would have imagined before, all before I could convince myself otherwise. The second ring was Richard's response. "Hey, Evelyn." There was an undertone of astonishment in his voice. I drew a deep breath in. "Is a cup of coffee going to be in your schedule?" A breath held. After that, subtly, without a doubt. I was seated across from him in a serene cafe by the lake 1 hour after that. Outside, the leaves of fall fluttered in the wind, and the aroma of freshly baked pastries and roasted coffee permeated the air. Richard gave me a curious, but not overly so, glance. "Your response surprised me." As I saw the froth of the cream melt into the black coffee, I stirred it. I debated whether or not to give them a visit. He waited with a nod. A long breath escaped my lips. "Your words have been lingering in my mind." His face remained expressionless. I paused, then locked eyes with him. I was mistaken. In his eyes, I saw a spark that I couldn't put my finger on. "Hey, Evelyn." I subtly broken in to explain that I'm not expressing any remorse about my life. Together with Mark, we have created something solid, something genuine. However, I believe I lost the ability to desire something for myself at some point. Richard stooped a little. "What comes next?" Hardly did I swallow. "Right now, I am uncertain." With the exception of the faint background noise of people talking, there was complete quiet between us. Richard finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "Your happiness is all I desire." I gave him my undivided attention. This man had no business meddling in my affairs or saying what he did, other than the fact that he saw something in me that not even I had noticed. Then it hit me, I needed to make a decision. Sitting at the little cafe table, my hands around the warm ceramic of my coffee cup as I stared across at Richard. "Your happiness is all I desire." Like a fact I had run from for so long, his words lingered in the atmosphere, heavy yet kind. For a long time, I convinced myself that being happy was enough, and that the cornerstones of a fulfilling existence were stability, loyalty, and security. Yeah, that's right. What Richard had found in me, though, was something I had no idea was lacking. Sensational need. Under the crushing pressure of my thoughts, I drew deep breaths. "Richard, I am at a loss as to how to proceed with this." He relaxed his gaze. "Evelyn, there is nothing you must do. Consider just the things that bring you joy. How long has it been since you treated yourself to a little something?" I started to reply, but then I froze. In what time frame was it last? 4 decades, I had made it my mission to safeguard Mark's profession, his aspirations, and his entire universe from harm. I had established a life of regularity and structure. But where do I stand? I savored a sip of my coffee, feeling briefly grounded by its deep, bitter warmth. Outside of my marriage, I am unsure of my identity. The words surprised even me as I confessed. A faint, knowing smile was given to me by Richard. Then perhaps now is the moment to discover. A frightened, breathy laugh escaped me. That is just horrifying. Very possibly. However, I believe it's also thrilling. No, I said. Well, I just couldn't. His point was well taken, and I knew it in my heart. We were quiet for some while. Outside, everything was happening just as it always had. The sound of passing cars, laughter, and the playful rustle of fall leaves. Life was full with action and no time to think. However, perhaps this was the first time I really had to. At last, I put my cup down and looked him in the eye. Richard, I have no idea what the future brings. Unfortunately, I am aware that I must resume my normal life activities. A small smile pulled at the edge of his mouth. I only wanted you to know that. I had sat down at the kitchen table the night before, patiently waiting for Mark to return home. Letting go of his tie and placing his briefcase on the table, he hardly glanced in my direction. "Long day," he whispered. "My body is drained." This man with whom I had shared my life and loved for so many years lingered in my mind as I observed him. Despite this, I couldn't help but notice the growing divide between us as he made his way around the home. I drew a long breath. "Sure, Mark. How about we have a chat?" He waited for me to look up before continuing. "To what end?" My heart sank. "Regarding ourselves." A little furrow formed on his forehead. "Where does this leave us?" The words that had been stewing in my mind since last night finally came out as I paused. "Hey Mark, I'm not feeling well." In response, he lowered his gaze. "Excuse me. It feels like I've spent my whole life playing the role of the reliable wife who does all the heavy lifting, provides emotional support, and ensures that our lives remain on track. You are loved by me." Unfortunately, visibility faded for me at some point. He looked surprised and scowled. "How did this come to be, Evelyn?" It was a no-go for me. It has lingered for quite some time. Honestly, I just can't bring myself to say it. While stroking his face, he took a seat across from me. "This is how you feel?" I had no idea. I observed him intently. "Were you ever curious?" He said nothing. Something hurtful hit me at that very second. As a spouse, Mark wasn't terrible. Unintentionally, he wasn't uncaring or harsh. Just like me, he had thought that marriage meant a life of monotony. That solace was sufficient. That it was unnecessary for us to keep tabs on one another as we previously did. Life was not being lived then. So much for love. No more. "May I ask what you mean?" After much hesitation, he finally sat up. I took a long breath. "My life has to revolve around me once more." Somewhat paled his face. "Am I being leaked?" My initial reaction was to scoff. "Mark, I am unsure of what is ahead. I am aware, nevertheless, that I cannot maintain this appearance forever. We need to make a change if we want our marriage to last." His gaze lingered on me for quite some time. Something flickered in his eyes, which I hadn't seen in years. Arrival at terms. Perhaps we could have salvaged this situation. It is possible that we did not. However, I was finally prepared.